Hi, I'm Lori Pine, the Joy CEO, and I'm so glad to be here with you today. Can I ask you something? When did being praised for what you do start feeling safer than actually being seen for who you are? If you are new here, welcome. I am so glad you found your way for me. This is a podcast for ambitious women who want to lead and live with joy. Not the Instagram version of joy, not that rainbows and unicorn fluffy sort of stuff. This is the real kind of joy that we talk about here, the kind that holds you when life gets lifey, when the rooms get hard and you're not sure where to turn. And to my people who show up every single week, thank you. Welcome back, and you know I love you. Today we are talking about the inner work of actually being seen. It is an inside job. We're going to talk about why visibility, the real kind of visibility, the kind your career is really asking of you, has so much less to do with strategy than anyone will ever tell you about. And so much more to do with small, fierce vows that you still are keeping. And you probably don't even remember making the vow to begin with. We are going to find the moment you made that vow. We're going to talk about it. We might talk to that younger version of you, and we're going to give her a little bit of love and maybe some joy. So let's dive in. There's a moment, when you're in a meeting and the conversation is going in a direction and you have a very strong point of view. You can see how this is playing out and you're formulating your thought. You're formulating what you want to say. And you almost say it, but then you don't. And then you're ready to say it again, but you hesitate. And then 10 minutes later, somebody says something that wasn't quite what you were going to say, not nearly as good, not nearly as articulate, but they made a point. And there you go, deflated. All the air just gets popped out of your bubble. And they're not as sharp and they're not as good, but they spoke up and you didn't. And the room nods and they move along. And you sit there wondering why on earth you didn't speak up. What happened? Or maybe it's an email and you're obsessing about the email and you've drafted it 17 times. You've edited it. You've gone over it. You know every single line by now. You open it again. You soften your tone. And then before you know it, the version that actually leaves your outbox is apologetic. It's got tones that really don't even sound like you. And it's quieter than the version who actually started out writing it. So maybe you're in a room you didn't even put yourself in, the project you didn't even volunteer for, the hand you didn't even raise, the opportunity you watch go to someone whose work, frankly, is no better than yours. And you sit back and you're like, what the heck? If any of these scenes sound familiar, this episode is for you. Last week, I had Kate Haranis on the podcast. So if you didn't listen, go back after you're done listening to this episode and listen to Kate because she was really fantastic. And she walks us through the strategy of visibility, what to say, where to say it, how to position yourself so the right people find you. And she is brilliant at this. How to really use PR and visibility in a way to show up so that it doesn't feel fake. But here's what happens. You probably took some notes if you listened to the episode. Kate was so compelling. You probably came away with some sort of a list. And then somewhere between your list and Tuesday afternoon, you ran into a part that maybe Kate didn't tell you how to fix. Here's the part nobody talks about with visibility. is it's not really a strategy problem. It is an identity problem. It is deep rooted within us. And we need to learn all the stuff that Kate teaches us. And there is so much value in hiring Kate. But the work before we get to Kate is an inside job. We have to do the work on the inside before we can ever expect to show up and be visible on the outside. So it's not that you have this strategy problem, it's this identity problem. And you can have a framework, you can have talking points, you can have the perfect opening line for the meeting, and still not actually be able to have the words come out of your mouth. Not because you don't know what to say, but because something happens to you when you're actually really seen for who you are, when all eyes are on you. Maybe your voice quakes, maybe you shrink, maybe you're like, oh my gosh, I wish this room would just swallow me whole. And if you've had an experience like that, you aren't ready to show up in this version of you that is today's version of you. So that's the work I want to walk you through today. We know that visibility is good for us. It's good for our careers. It's good for our influence. It's good for our personal brand. It's good for our lives. It's the way we want to build this next iteration of ourselves. So why is it so hard? I want to tell you a small little story. And it's a personal story, but I think that you can relate to it. You might have a similar story of your own in your own version. When I was in the 3rd grade, I was out on the playground at my little elementary school, very innocently playing with my best friend, Dee Dee. And Dee Dee was adorable. She was the most adorable 8-year-old you've ever seen. Long blonde hair, adorable, just in all ways, she was darling. And this little boy came up and was trying to play with us and play tag. And so we included him. And he looks at me and he says, I don't like you. I like Dee Dee because you're chubby and she's not. And I did not know that I was chubby. This was such a fall from grace for me moment. I just knew that I was Dee Dee's best friend. We were having fun on the playground. I knew I had a great family and I was loved at home. And what happened in this moment is this little boy just ranked me and made me feel like I was so much less than. And in that moment, I made a vow. I didn't call it a vow at the time. I was only 8, so I didn't have that language. But in this fierce little way, that little 8-year-old girl decided, I will never, ever put myself in that position again. Never, ever, ever. And here's what I want you to know. I kept that promise for decades. For decades. I didn't keep it by hiding because I'm not a hider. I kept it the way a lot of high achieving women do. I kept overachieving. I kept looking for the next thing and the next thing. And I wanted accolades and I wanted to be praised for my deeds. And I wanted achievements and I wanted success. And I wanted everything on the outside so that somehow I could feel better on the inside. But that little 8-year-old, she didn't feel better. She felt less than, she felt ranked, she felt like she was passed over, not chosen. And so the things I did and the metrics that I hit, the rooms I walked into, those were all just checks in a box. And then I was ready for the next one and ready for the next one. And what was the next one? What was the next thing I could accomplish? And, that began to feel really safe because you can control deeds. You can control achievements, but being seen, the actual me underneath all of that was uncomfortable. And for a long time, I really couldn't have told you why. Like, this required therapy. So let me ask you something. Like, what is your version of this story? What did you decide? Maybe you weren't 8. Maybe it happened to you at a different age, but you were younger and you wanted to feel safe. And being seen did not feel safe because I promise you, you likely decided something. I think we all did. So let me just be careful here because I'm not going to tell you that, fear of visibility is irrational. I'm not even going to come anywhere near close to saying that, or that we should just push through it, or we should outgrow it, or, we didn't get some sort of memo. Because this protection is real and it's doing its job. Our brain is constantly looking for danger, and this was a danger. And so putting yourself out there, speaking up at the meeting, raising your hand for the project, sending the email, especially to senior level leaders, all of that takes risks, and risks that we're going to be exposed in some way that maybe we don't feel prepared to be exposed. So it's as though some part of us is just bracing that we're going to relive that moment of rejection, being passed over, being ranked, being the last. And who wants that in any form? Not me. And I'm sure you don't either. So not one of us. So if you've been wondering why visibility feels so difficult, when all the while you are so capable, this is the why. There's something in you that is saying, no, that is not safe. And it's not a confidence problem. It's not a skills gap. It is a smart girl somewhere inside of you doing the job she's been doing for 30 or 40 years, keeping you safe the only way she knew how. And here's what I want you to know. She made that vow when she was 8, but we're no longer 8 anymore. We have grown up. She believed that if people saw the wrong thing, the chubby little girl who was unwanted, the too much thing, the not enough thing, the whatever your version was, that would be the truth about her and the only truth about her. That was visible on the outside would be the verdict on the inside. And guess what? We know better now. Our adult version of us has caught up to know logically that that is not true. You have lived long enough now to know that you are much more than anything that anybody can see on the outside. You've watched yourself be misunderstood and you've survived it. You've watched yourself be rejected for the wrong reasons and you kept right on being who you are anyway. You've built a life with depth and no first impression could ever capture that. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm sure we're so much alike. Like, I have been rejected. I have been passed over. I've been let go from companies that I was so loyal to and I loved. I've been divorced. I thought that meant something and it ended up it didn't. And so, it's not that the rules change. It just means that the 8-year-old's vow doesn't have to run the show anymore. And it's not because that wasn't real when we were 8, but we've grown up and now we can rewrite this story. You can take back the pen and rewrite the story. And it can be gentle and it can be with love for her. And you can let her know, that younger version of you, I've got this from here. We are good. Let me tell you how far we've come since that day on the playground. And so I talk a lot about the hula hoop in my coaching, in my practice, and I talk a lot about it on this show. And it's this idea that if you were to step inside of a hula hoop, the only thing you control is inside the hula hoop, and that's you. That's all we control in this life. Yet we spend so much of our time trying to control everything outside of the hula hoop. But it's in the inside of the hula hoop where we control our choices, our efforts, our values, our perspectives, how we show up, what we say yes to, what we say no to. And outside the hula hoop, well, that's where everything else lives. And that's where what other people think of you lives. I didn't know that when I was 8, that there was a hula hoop, and what that little boy thought of me was outside of my hula hoop. And, the same thing now, if you fast forward to what they think of you when they see your name on a project, what they decide about you in a meeting on a very first impression, what they decide when they find out you're their new boss, what makes them respond to you when you raise your hand and speak in a meeting. And all of this lives outside of your hula hoop. Yet, we bring it inside the hula hoop. And here's the part I really think is important. Because most of us here, their opinions are outside of your control, and we nod along. And we go right back to replaying what someone said incessantly, over and over again, on loop in our head. And 3 days later at midnight, we're still thinking about it. Their opinions are outside of the hula hoop, but what we do with their opinions, that's inside of the hula hoop. And the story we tell ourselves about what they thought of us, the story that we tell ourselves about what that's going to mean to our career, the power that they have over us, the meaning we assign to a comment or an eye roll, the way we take that personally, all of that is inside the hula hoop. If you think about the way we let one piece of feedback become the truth about who we are, the way we shrink the next time because of what someone might say, instead of actually owning our power within the hula hoop and saying, do I even believe this to be true? Is what this person saying factual? Because my experience on the playground when I was 8 could have gone very differently if I would have just been like, I'm not chubby and you have freckles and you're really dumb. It could have been an entirely different experience, but I didn't respond that way. I took what that little boy said as the truth and I internalized it. And let me tell you, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years later, I was still doing the same thing. But inside of my hula hoop, I have learned that part of me gets to question what is actually the truth and what is not the truth. And what happened to me all those years ago is I made a story about what was said to me, and I made that part of how I would move through the world from that point forward, even if it really wasn't true. I made it become the truth. So one sentence is said outside of the hula hoop. I bring it into the hula hoop and I make it the end all be all. And I create a whole narrative around it. And so that narrative kept running all those years in the background of every single room I stepped into. there was still a version of that chubby little 8-year-old showing up, feeling rejected and not worthy and not enough. And here is the work. Here is the work that we must do. It's simpler than you think, but our job, and the job that is actually ours, is to own the narrative. What is the narrative? What are you telling yourself? Not their narrative, not the little boy with freckles who was scrawny and decided one day that he thought that I was chubby. Not that narrative, your narrative. What is it that you're going to decide for you when your grown-up version of you walks into a room, has something to say, and wants to give something that is so meaningful? So to decide before we send the email, what this email actually means to us. What is it that we want to communicate? Who wants to show up? What version of us is going to show up? And then to decide when the comment comes in, are we going to be like Teflon and just let it fall from us? Or are we going to be like a sponge and absorb it as some sort of truth? We do not own the narrative. Somebody else will. Let me say that again. If we do not own the narrative, somebody else will. And it probably won't be the version of us we've chosen. So own your narrative. What does owning the narrative actually look like, Lori? I'm so glad you asked. Concepts and all of that can be so lovely, but when you're going close to this, you actually have to go back in your life, which means, what is it that happened and where did I start to give away my power? When you're doing life the way you do life now, back-to-back meetings, sudden project dropped in your lap, deck somebody needs by Friday, 3 different Slack channels running, Teams is open, people are IMing you constantly throughout the day. Your brain is like short-circuiting. You know that there are things you've ignored and they just can't be ignored any longer. You are drained. This is where some work happens, not in some hypothetical future, but in where you have time to build your brand right now as you are. And in the calendar that you already have. So here's what I want you to try. 3 small moves. First, name what you're bringing. Before the meeting, before everything gets into the meat of the matter, I want you to get clear on what you're actually going to contribute. Not what you're worried about, what you think they'll think about you. Did they like your outfit? Did they like what you have to say? Are they judging your leadership? Do they think you're the right one for the job? Do they wish they had their old boss back? None of that. All that is head trash. What are you going to contribute? You're going to bring perspective for your team. You're bringing 6 months of customer data nobody else in the room has. You're bringing 3 decades worth of experience. You've seen the play that is playing out, already done before, and you have a point of view on how to solve the problem. And so bring that into the room, whatever it is, name it. And if you have a question, ask the question, because chances are somebody else also has the question and they are too nervous, too afraid, too shy, too bashful to raise their hand. And by you asking the question, you will help somebody else in the room. Second, decide who you are there for. Not to be the loudest, not to be the know-it-all, not to suck all the oxygen out of the room. You're not trying to impress anybody. You are already impressive. You are there for the decision that has to get made, the way that we move the business forward. So decide who it is that you're speaking to. Is it senior management? Is it a customer? Is it a direct report? Is it a subordinate? Who is it that you are speaking to that is going to move this meeting in the direction that this meeting needs to be moved? And then when you are specifically speaking to someone or for someone, then you don't have to worry about getting the approval of everyone in the room. You can just be focused on the mission at hand. And third, decide what this means about you before anyone else gets to. Do not give away your power. So this is really important. Decide before you say the thing in the meeting that saying it means you're someone who contributes. You are a contributor. It doesn't matter what other people think about you. It's that you are contributing. Decide before you send the email that sending it means you are someone who has a point of view, that you're passionate, that you care, that you're taking the time to give an explanation. Decide before you raise your hand for the project that raising it means you're someone who goes for things, that you're willing to go an extra mile, put in extra effort. Whatever happens next, whether you get the nod or you get silence or somebody rolls their eyes, they may not even be rolling their eyes at you. Decide what it is that you think about it, because then you will have already written the headline. And that's what matters, that you write the headline and nobody else gets to. That is owning the narrative. And that is actually in your hula hoop. Okay, so how will this compound? You're not going to post it on LinkedIn. You are not building a personal brand on the side of your 80-hour work week. You're not doing something that is all for the glam or the likes or the reposts or the tweets. You are doing something far more meaningful and far more sustainable for somebody in your role. You are showing up in rooms that you're already in. You're showing up as the woman you already are. And you're doing this over and over and over again. And the people in those rooms, the ones who decides what happens next for you, they notice. And you get to show them the best version of you when you own the narrative, when you are telling them who you are and what you are capable of, not just with your words, but with your actions. And every time they see you, they are going to meet this extraordinary woman who consistently shows up and has something to say that meaningfully changes the direction of the business. That is visibility for you. That is the version that fits your life and that takes you from being the little girl on the playground to being the grown-up girl in the corner office. In closing, I just want to say to the woman listening who is in between meetings, who is buried under projects, who is running on fumes just to function, I see you. I know all of the things you are doing. Performance reviews, meeting with your team, meeting with your boss, running the gamut. And all the while, your calendar is booked full. You're double booked, you're triple booked. You're having to work after the kids go to bed, after your husband goes to bed, so that you can just keep up. You are already visible. You just maybe haven't been the one deciding exactly what everyone sees. And this week, I'm not asking you to post anything, not asking you to add anything to your plate. I'm asking you to take one moment and just notice where you'd normally make yourself little and smaller, where you'd soften your tone, where you'd let somebody else say the thing, where you'd send the email with, First, let me apologize, or I just wanted to say, and instead, you lead with your own pen and your own voice, and you take back your own power, your own story, your own narrative, and you show up not as the 8-year-old who requires protecting, but as the version of you who is so ready to be seen for the marvelous, ambitious, brilliant woman you are. Okay, I think that's enough. I am so cheering you on. Please send me a note and let me know how you are taking back your narrative and showing up to be the most authentic version of you. I'm so glad to be doing it with you. Until next week.